Call this meeting to order. In case of an emergency evacuation need, we'll leave by the main lobby east and west doors and gather at the gazebo. If those doors aren't available, we'll take the doors to the north behind council members here and gather at the muster point, which is the gazebo. And we do not return until we get the all clear signal from staff. Seeking a motion to adopt the agenda as amended, the amendment will be a closed session addition to discuss advice from officials. Councillor Rilling?
I make a motion to accept the agenda as amended.
And all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Our first item will be the school resource officer request found on page 3 of the package. And we will have Mr. Lebsack lead this discussion.
Hello, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Lebsack. And welcome.
So, as we know, we've discussed the school resource officer a few times in probably the last 3 or 4 years. This previous request was brought up again in the spring of 2024 when the town proposed to the school boards, which was Chinook's Edge and Red Deer Catholic regional divisions, both boards, the reintroduction of the municipal or the school resource officer as a municipal enforcement position, not as an RCMP position. Again, that did not work. School boards were not interested in that or could not afford that. The town had then created our community safety and wellness officer position. So that was again in 2024 into the 2025 budget cycle is when that program is being developed. The Chinook's Edge then just recently approached the town to request that a school resource officer position be funded by the town for the schools within Sylvan Lake. A meeting was held on May 23rd, 2025. That included, as you can see, their superintendent from Chinook's Edge School Division, H.J. Cody School Council Chair, principal and vice principal from H.J. Cody, principal and vice principals from Fox Run School, town representatives, the Mayor Hanson, Councillor Payne, CAO Phillips, and myself, and also Staff Sergeant Peden from the RCMP. Again, had a good discussion there. Again, the Chinook's Edge School Division would still like to bring forward the recommendation for school resource officer position within the detachment. And I have included into the discussion portion then. So I did provide some background there just on the timeline of when the SRO program was first implemented in Sylvan Lake and then when it was vacated and terminated by Chinook's Edge School Division in 2021. Talked about some of the proposed funding for the new SRO program that was part of the Municipal Enforcement Department, not RCMP. That's those percentages there with Town of Sylvan Lake, Red Deer County, Chinook's Edge School Division, and Red Deer Catholic School Division. And I guess we've provided some options there in terms of moving forward, and I think that's kind of where I will leave it, is looking for feedback from council and some direction if we want to add a RCMP school resource officer into the budget discussion for 2026, or whether we're going to maintain status quo with our community safety officer as part of municipal enforcement. So I think I'll open the floor to questions now, or sorry, pass it back to the chair and go from there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Lebsack. Looking for others to jump in first. Councillor Payne?
This has been a situation that, you know, I've had a lot of thought and a lot of opportunity to think about this and to be a part of this for the last few years, having been at the high school for nearly 20 years. The differences that I've seen over the course of the last 8 years have been tremendous. You know, just the amount of issue that we have It's a much bigger conversation than right now, but essentially what I want to say is, if we have opportunity to have somebody in the buildings, whether it be Fox Run, H.J. Cody, or the elementary schools, if we have somebody in the building, the modeling that takes place, the opportunity for them to be connected, having their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the buildings, that trickles down into the community quite tremendously. In the past, when we've had SROs in the buildings that have been very effective, in particular, I just want to name one. Constable Mike Lee was such an integral part of the community. He knew every kid. He was a part of the school on a daily basis. I think the loss of this program has had detrimental effects on the schools and on the students. I think that it's unfortunate that it comes down to a funding question. Who's going to fund it? Because in the end, the benefit is tremendous. And unfortunately, when you're talking about schools and school budgets and district budgets, there's not a lot of money being given to schools and districts to do things that aren't instructionally led. So I look at this as not just being something for the schools, but something for the community. Having somebody in the schools that can be that connection again. And it's not to say that it necessarily needs to be an RCMP officer. I think the most effective one is an RCMP officer. It comes down to the individual. You need to have somebody who is connected and willing to be connected, who wants to be involved. With that being said, I know that there's interest in our community for an individual to be a part of this. I don't think it's appropriate to discuss that at this point, but I know that going back to the way it was is possible, and I would support doing that. I don't know what a CSW program looks like. I know when we had talked in the past about funding this with a peace officer, that the interest was there and the interest seemed good, but it's not happened. I don't see anyone in the building. What we do get is a couple of times a week or once a week, maybe we will have somebody will walk through the building, an RCMP officer will walk through the building if they have the time, but it's not like it was. And I do think that our community is the worst for it.
Mayor Hansen.
I'll just add, I think there's so much value in this position. I actually really believe in the CPO route over an RCMP model, because when we've had conversations with RCMP, there really is no guarantee that they can fill it. There might be some interest, but there's a lot of challenges in the way. So I think we have some more control there. What I do think the next step is to maybe potentially apply some more pressure on the sharing of the funding model before we have any Sylvan Lake budget discussions. How that conversation happened was we sent a letter, they sent back a letter that said no. I'm not even sure it got much attention around either of the school board tables. I didn't have a single conversation with any of those that we requested the funding of. And we just kind of took the no and continued on and adapted the program, which I so appreciate that we've done. We've made it work in a community way, but I think that we have an opportunity to maybe apply some additional pressure and have some conversations before we say, hey, we'll fund it all on our own, because I think the funding model that was proposed is fair. And I'd love to see us take a bit more of a light advocacy touch on this before we make some final decisions and see if there is any possibility that this could be a shared cost between school districts. And, the model that is proposed in there, I do believe is fair. The cost is half looking at a CPO rather than an RCMP officer, and I think we could get a really good fit, and there would be a community benefit. So I see why the town would pick up a large portion of that amount, but I just think there could be a step in between before we make that final call when it comes to some conversations that might need to happen over the next 6 months. and see if we have any movement, and then it could come back for another discussion if we're not able to see any progress. I was surprised when we went into that meeting that the school principal didn't even know that that request had ever been sent to the school board. So there certainly was a communication step that was missing. The schools weren't on side. They were surprised that this was requested and denied. So I think that there's just more we could do. But I really see the value in it, and I'd love to see us make it more of a priority to push towards this position, just some steps.
Councillor Mearns?
Yeah, I would support a CPO side of things rather than RCMP. I remember our conversations back, in 2019 of where's the hire for the RCMP and back and forth, and we can't fill it. We don't have the control over it. Whereas if it's a CPO, we hire for that, we have that position, and we can actually control it and get the right person for it. So that's something I would support, is on the CPO side of things. And then, yeah, let's have some more discussion with the school board and see where we can meet.
Councillor Rilling?
Another point, I think, is if we don't do our homework, can we expect support? Like, if, surprise, we have a CPO for you, and okay, now what do we do with them or her? And I think, it goes back to the old saying, you put your money where your mouth is. And if you can have that, if you can it can be addressed even on that level, there has to be support in order for us to carry it through. I really think, I think it's an excellent program. I was really, my first thought when I read through this was, I want to know what Councillor Payne has to say, because he's living it. He's living it every day. Has it made a difference? Is it worth even the conversation? But obviously, it is. So I really support it, but I think we need to do our due diligence in how we make it happen.
Councillor Parsons?
Well, in talking to Councillor Payne over the years, the important thing is, I'd like the position is, yes, we need it. I'm fully supportive of it and how we do it. But the big thing is who's doing it, because the constable that did it before was one of a kind, and hopefully how you can replicate that is very important. So however we get there, I'm supporting it however we get there. If we need some more time to study it and make sure and do what everybody else says, I'm all for either way.
Throwing my own thoughts, I've worked with SROs before for years with Red Deer Public, and very valuable. There's times when I was thinking about, sometimes I come up with mixed models to a fault. But one question I had in my own mind is, we've gone from 100% to 0%, and then we're gonna go back to 100%. And knowing the pressures on budgets that Councillor Payne referred to with school boards, I worry that down the road we should negotiate and get a good mix. But I wondered in the back of my mind, what if it was a 75% model? We had an RCMP, 75%. Does that work? And that's a discussion with the RCMP too. It's not just our choice to say, oh, we want 75%. And I also like this thought of how we have a CPO model that delivers a lot of the program of that community relationship. But it's more than just the relationship. Sometimes there's functions that the RCMP bring to the school that a CPO cannot. And one of them for sure is what you call the violent threat risk assessments, when you need to assess, and the only way you can do it properly to assess violent threats is, and I'm not just talking about, well, anyways, I won't get into it. It's a whole days of workshops to get there. But the idea is you need the RCMP's access to records, and only they can bring it to the meeting. And these are multi-hour meetings assessing life and limb for people in our community. And these things are real. They happen more often than we would ever want. So I know they happen here, even though I haven't worked in our town officially in a school capacity. So that's a few thoughts. Strong support for an RCMP element to a program. I'm not married to the 100% idea of having a full position, wondering with more conversation if a mixed model will have greater sustainability. And in the spirit of what does this really mean, imagine if everybody over 60 was in one place. Would we put some town resources into it? If every citizen over 60 was in one place. Here we have every single youth in a collection of places we call schools, and it's well worth the investment to have the heartbeat of the RCMP or CPO in there as well. And what's going on in the schools is going on in the homes and in the streets of our town. As I've often answered the question, are there drugs in schools? I always answer it with, are there drugs in your town? You know, things like that. Just as an example, schools reflect the community, and RCMP can make great relationships, and CPOs too. Those are my thoughts. Councillor Dakin?
Yes, I am partial to number 2. Council consider moving forward with the dedicated municipal officers school resource. But then I also considered, is this something that we could do some advocacy on from the RCMP? Specifically, could it be part of their training program? That we ask that part of their training program be that they have to participate in, municipal schools in regions. I don't know, just a thought to kind of save money, maybe do some advocacy on saying, great way to get to know the community, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think it's so important that the RCMP or that the officers know who the kids are in town. It's really the pulse of a lot of the issues, and having that relationship at the beginning can stop a lot of long-term issues. Yeah.
Councillor Payne?
You know, in thinking about the difference between CPO and the RCMP, I just think RCMP brings a different level of authority, a different level of confidence, a different level of experience. And it just takes a very specific kind of individual to be able to be in an environment with kids. And I haven't seen that in what has been recently. There's not a lot of faith in policing right now when it comes to young people, high school age kids. And I think having an RCMP officer who is assigned would bring a different level of authority. And it really does, for me, just having had that experience, it does mean something different when it's a member walking through the hallways. Regardless of who we get for this, what it comes down to in the end is the person needs to be present. They need to be present all the time, not somebody who has a threefold mandate where a third of their time is spent, in the schools, but split between 6 schools. It has to be somebody whose whole experience is the school resource. Being there for what's going on, being there present. If we, again, just mentioned Mike Lee. Mike was not just an SRO, he coached in the building. He walked the building. On the days when he wasn't in the building, you felt the difference. Whoever does this needs to be present. It needs to be somebody who's dedicated to this. It needs to be somebody who's going to build those relationships. And, as Councillor Stindi brings up, there are pieces that an RCMP officer brings that a CPO can't. And I do think that as much as it's significantly a greater cost, I do believe the benefit is significantly greater as well. I would strongly encourage us to consider the RCMP alternative.
Mayor Hansen?
I just want to say, the cost is a barrier for me, but more than the cost, it was just the logistical challenges we had. I'll speak probably more frankly than I should. Generally, I'll give a couple quotes from the meeting. There is no upward movement when you're in an SRO position with the RCMP. There is no higher rank that you can achieve in that position. It is really a challenge to get someone who wants to be there for the long haul, so it will always be a position with turnover. It is often a position, from our experience, that it is somebody who is on reduced duties, and they are put there because the hours work within the modifications that they are given, which means they also are only there while they're on reduced duties, and once they can resume regular duties, they move on to somewhere else. So while we have had just fantastic experiences, that is what's contributed to the large vacancies that we've continually seen, and I believe we would continue to see inconsistencies in that position just because they don't have the ability to fill that role. Because as an officer, if you can't ever move up from there, is that where you're going to want to stay forever? So I think that's a real barrier for me on top of the cost in going that direction, is just the fact that you might get someone in fantastic, but realistically they're going to be there for a short period of time, and then we will have a long vacancy followed by another short period of time with another long vacancy. And I would love to see what that position could look like with somebody that is in there for years, not months. And there is no indication that I've received from the RCMP that it would be any different of an experience, because there is just no options for movement outside of that role. So that plus the cost is what sways me. Although I absolutely agree there is less that can happen in that role, I do believe that consistency and with the right personality, if we had control over the hiring for that could outweigh some of our challenges there. And my other point is gone, but yeah, I hope we can have, I know. It was around the position that is there right now. So really my recollection of the history was we tried to go this route, we didn't get any buy-in from the funding partners from the one letter that we sent them. So then we went a different way and said, okay, the municipality will fund it and we'll split up the position. If we were to get support to do this, I guess, is there an opportunity to change that position that now is already funded, and for council to say, although, you know, it's been proposed that this position does multiple different things, we really see that youth is the priority without adding an additional budgeted position, and could we funnel that existing position 100% into the schools? And unfortunately give up some of the other components of that role, but is that an option that's on the table for us? Because when I look at that role, that's really where I see the most value and the most concern that I hear about right now.
Mr. Lebsek, you were going to add some information, I believe, just a moment ago.
Yes, thank you. So a couple of different things, and I won't lose the last one because that was probably the most important one. What I was going to say also was I can check with the RCMP. I've written a note here down about some kind of like a split model, like you'd indicated, 75, 25%. But as Mayor Hansen indicated, it is a specific position. So it's not a position where if one person's off on leave, they can take another person and move it into that role. They can't in an SRO position. So you can move constables around, you can move corporals up and down, you know, corporal can fill in for a sergeant, constable can fill in somewhere, they can't for an SRO position. So I was going to make that clear, just so that we know if the SRO position does go off on leave, they can't just take another constable and move them into that position. It isn't allowed within the RCMP system. So I just wanted to clarify that for you. Back to Mayor Hansen's last point about could we change the mandate of that position if council wishes us to? Absolutely, we can. We were in development of, so there is a SRO program that's developed and approved by the Alberta Peace Officer Program. And we have a copy of that program. We were developing one for Sylvan Lake before we took a little bit of a bend in the road here, but certainly if that was council's wish, we could go back to that direction, yes.
Councilor Mertz?
Back in 2015, when the original agreement was signed, Red Deer County was part of that. Is there an opportunity to have Red Deer County partner again? Was there funding coming from Red Deer County in 2015 or not?
Yeah, so through the chair. So the original agreement in 2015, yes, there was funding from Red Deer County. This last go around in 2024, when we spoke with them, verbally, when I spoke with my counterpart there, they had basically said, yeah, we'll get involved again, and wanted to see what the whole program was going to look like and what all the buy-in was. So did we have written confirmation from them or from their council? No. But from my counterpart, he had said that, yeah, he sees no reason why they would not get involved again. So kind of would lean on that, yeah.
Mayor Hansen?
But just to clarify, we didn't go that next step because no other partners jumped on board. And that was really the condition of their potential partnership.
So I'm not hearing a crystal clear consensus here on everything. However, I'm hearing that we seem to want to explore this for budget next year. It sounds like we want some discussions to happen between partners before budget to give it some more depth and understand what's possible. That's what I am definitely hearing. Anything I'm missing? And Mr. Lebsack, any clarification needed on other?
So I think I'll just ask to make sure that I'm clear. I think the first step is we will create some speaking points that goes to mayor and council so that you can do some advocacy on your end. It'll include things like the position, 2 different options for the position, some different funding levels in there, what it would look like with an RCMP or with a CPO. We can even do some benefits on it. You know, I would agree that certainly an RCMP officer carries more clout when it comes to that position. So we can do some of those benefits in there. And then the second point that I believe you're looking for is come budget time, options and cost analysis on the position, whether it's an RCMP position and or a CPO position, provide both those options to council. And just wanting to clarify, did I miss anything?
Sounds, see head nodding. Mayor Hansen?
I guess just I'd ask specifically if we could refresh the letter that was written last year and get it ready to resend with an updated date and any of that updated information. And then if we could also get administrative support to request a meeting with the school boards, which we're getting into tough timing here. I do think we might have, I don't know this for sure, but the meeting was called by the principal of HJ Cody. So at least for the Chinooks Edge School Board, it might be of value to have a representative from the school to help speak about why that would be important, and maybe we could bring them in as a partner in at least that conversation. And there could be the same for the Catholic School Board as well. But, you know, we got together for this meeting and nobody from the school boards, no elected representatives were able to attend that time. So I do think taking that next step and requesting a meeting so that we can have that conversation would be a great next step.
Councillor Payne?
I think the initial meeting was really an opportunity for us to kind of see where everybody sits. It was less of a decision-making meeting and more of an information sharing meeting. So I think any subsequent meeting that comes needs to be with individuals who are making those decisions. So I think a meeting that doesn't involve the chairs of the school boards would be a moot meeting. So we need to work really hard on having the school boards involved in the process. Just knowing what's happening with education funding right now, it's going to take a process to be able to figure out where the money's going to come from. But that conversation needs to be had.
Didn't hear the last part.
Just knowing where education funding is right now, it's going to be a process to figure out where money's going to come from. But the conversation needs to be had, and I think as well, there is discretionary funding at the district level. So I think having district administration there as well needs to happen. So I'm not sure if this is something that's going to be able to happen, you know, in the next couple of months, but I think looking heavily into the fall prior to budget deliberations is when this needs to happen.
Councillor Mearns?
Do we involve the County of Red Deer at the same time in this meeting, or is that too early? If they're going to be participating, it might not hurt to have someone there. Just a thought.
Sounds reasonable to me to invite them. That's my gut reaction to your question. Great question. Also, I'm thinking about we're opening the door slowly to a new high school. Red Deer Catholic will contribute to a large growth in population for a high school, specifically where quite a bit of our CMP work does get done in the high school setting. And the need and the benefits from this type of program will increase dramatically when we think of the school growing that much. Mayor Hansen?
Just a final question for council. Do we have I mean, you've heard my opinion, but I'm happy to be upvoted amongst council. Is there a strong leaning either way to explore? It's a very different conversation for a $250,000 position versus a $90-something thousand position. So could we do a round to see whether our leaning is towards RCMP or CPO, just so that does change the request quite substantially?
Just want to comment on that before we do. I think before we know what the funding possibilities are from the districts and from the county, I think that's somewhat of a little bit too early in the conversation. So if we hear back from the districts and the county that, yes, they're willing to fund a portion of this, then I think that changes the conversation quite dramatically, so.
I'll just give an indication. I'm open to the idea of thinking about different models, but I have stated already, RCMP brings something to the table that we cannot get by a CPO alone model. So I'm a type of RCMP or RCMP blended model, but it needs RCMP in from my experience. Any other comments just generally about conversation? Yeah, go ahead.
RCMP is the best choice. It's just too expensive. RCMP is the right rule for this. It's just the price tag.
Councillor Mearns?
Yeah, further to Councillor Payne's point, that's, understanding that it shouldn't be a budget item, but it is a budget item. So I would like to know what the partnerships would look like, and that would help, if it's gonna, cost the town X amount and it's only 20% more based on a cost sharing model, then RCMP all the way, but that's my position.
Councillor Parson?
Same. Let's explore the model and see what we can. I think we're all around the table. We think that the RCMP would be better, but there's a lot of money. Let's find out. That is a big part. So let's find out what the funding model could look like with partners.
Okay, sounds like we have a consensus there to explore that partnership clearly and fully. Yeah, Mr. Lebsack?
Sorry, one more clarification. So I'm clear, we'll do funding models for both, and that way council can see which ones they are. Back to Mayor Hansen's point about the letters, we'll refresh and update the letters, but they're going to come from yourself this time or from council? Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify, yeah.
Okay. Mayor Hansen,
Last
one more comment?
clarification.
Yeah?
Is there any appetite to change that current position that is already funded? No. Okay.
Clarify your question?
Any appetite to change this position that is already funded by us in full to remove some of the other components and just choose a focus?
Go ahead, Councillor Payne.
I'm trying to choose my words carefully. Being somebody who's in the building, in the schools, I don't know what our current funded model is. Like, I can read it, I can see it, but I don't see it. I see it on paper. On paper, it looks great, but I've never seen it. And I'm in the hallway all the time. I'm in the building all the time. So, is there an appetite to change it? Yeah. There's an appetite to see something other than black and white. So, yeah.
Mr. Lebsack, if you can speak to that.
Yeah, just to clarify a little bit. So the current model that you see there, the safety wellness officer model, is not rolled out in the schools yet. It plans to go out into the schools, again, 1/3 of its program in September. meet with the school principals, find out what their direction is for what their wish is. Again, we kind of threw out some options, like, do they want us at school events? Do they want them just up and down the hallways? Do they want them specifically, you know, in the classroom, teaching a program?
Training sessions.
There's different options there. So that was to be met with the school principals and rolled out for this fall. So again, meet with the school principals probably third week, fourth week of September, and then start implementing that in the fall.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dakin?
Have we been paying for this, like this last year, and nobody's been there? Is that what I'm hearing? Is that what I'm hearing?
So to clarify, the position was hired this year, yes. And so they're doing regular CPO duties right now while they're building out the program.
So they've been at the schools?
They haven't been in the schools in a community safety wellness program capacity, no.
Thank you.
Councillor Mearns?
Yeah, just for, when did we approve that position? Is that? 2024 for 2025? Okay, and so they're hired April-ish, is what I'm assuming, or?
Again, yes, we probably got them hired April-ish, end of March, early April sometime when we do our hiring for the new positions, correct?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think that sums up the discussion. Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Lebsack. Our next item coming up on agenda is public survey options on page 20, starting on page 23 of the agenda. And Mr. Waldo, welcome. I'll let you take it away.
Thank you very much. Good evening. So today we'd like to discuss surveys, specifically if, what, and how we want to use surveys for the purposes of supporting administration and council.
One second, can we pause? Oh, can we go back to what?
I'm just looking at faces and hearing comments around the table, and I'm not quite sure we're wrapped up there. Are we?
My point of view is, yeah, wrapped up. It's where we're at today. It's just not happy where we're at. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I'm a little choked, actually. I wish I could be a little more diplomatic about it, but if we hired a CPO for the schools in April, why are we not seeing them in the building until the end of September? Like, to me, that's just ridiculous. Like, I want to be kinder about it, but that's ridiculous. Like, if we're looking at this model for the future, no. Like, this to me is just exactly the reason why it needs to not be us. It needs to be the RCMP.
I'm not the chair.
Okay. I will guide a few more comments. Councillor Dakin?
So I guess the question is, they're not in there because they're building out the program. Is that right? They have to do it themselves, the CPO? It's not a pre-existing program that we're bringing in?
Okay, we'll let Mr. Lebsack answer the question.
Doesn't the program already exist? Like, we were just
that's what I'm
told that the
asking.
program already exists.
We'll let Mr. Lebsack speak to it.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Lebsack.
Thank you. Yes, so to clarify, there's a school resource officer program that exists through the Peace Officer program, but we did not hire a school resource officer position. We changed it to be a community wellness officer, community safety wellness officer, and so that program does not exist. That's something we're the only ones that have it as far as I know, and we're building that out. So that includes community aspects, doing some teaching to younger kids, doing some educational components, as well as working in the school system. So that's why you haven't seen what I would call boots on the ground, if you want to call it, in the schools. I can tell you that they patrol some of the issues that we get from the schools, direct phone calls we get from the schools is the Mac store is a problem, the parking lot is a problem, the school, the trees along the parking lot are a problem. Our officers are in there quite often. But again, you're right, they are not 100% in the schools or active in the schools because that's not the program that we were building out.
Okay. Any other direct questions? Okay, thank you, Mr. Lebsack. And thank you, Mr. Waldo, for that pause.
No problem. Okay, we'll rewind. So today we're looking to seek direction from council just regarding public surveys, if, what, and how we want to use them moving forward. And so provided some background here to kind of show how we've gotten to this point and to what we're doing, why we do them. So in 2013, the town enlisted the services to create a corporate communications strategy. And as part of that strategy, it was recommended that a survey was conducted every 2 to 3 years to survey the public in terms of gauging their satisfaction levels within the town, and then to use that information to help guide administration and council during budget time. So those surveys were done in 2015 and 2018. They were handled by a third-party contractor through the RFP process. Again, it was to provide data and support council and administration at budget time, and the surveys were planned to be about every 3 years, as I mentioned. In 2021, when a citizen satisfaction survey was due to be tendered out, we placed that on hold. We were in the throngs of COVID, and it was a financial decision. It was also a decision that was made at the direction of the CAO at that time not to conduct one, just given the scenario in which we were in the heart of COVID. We probably would have had skewed results that did not properly reflect our service levels, given a lot of the angst that was in the community at the time. So in light of not doing that, and as a budgetary consideration, since 2022, citizen satisfaction surveys were not included in the budget, but in order to have something to provide to council and administration, we took it upon ourselves to create some online surveys. We did that from 2022, 23, and 24. We looked at expanding our engagement through the budget process with the community through an online budget tool. We were considering that for both 2024 and for this current fiscal year, but we did move away from that again for budget considerations. So we've seen varying results through the different ways in which we've surveyed the public. When we did use third-party contractors, obviously this is what they do. They have a lot of different resources at their disposal when they are surveying the public. And so in 2015 and 2018, they both ensured that they had that 401 responses, and at the time is what they deemed statistically relevant in terms of trying to define where the public sentiment and feedback was. Through our online budget surveys, we haven't approached that. We've done better in the last couple of years, but we're still a little bit behind just because, again, it's exclusively online, whereas third-party contractors have a team that make phone calls all hours of the day, on weekends, different days, making sure they're getting specific demographics so that they can cast as wide a net as possible. So that's kind of the background around how the survey started and where we got to and where we are today. The discussion today is kind of twofold. One, we need to clearly define a goal of what we're seeking from these surveys. What do we want to get from the feedback, or from the public? What feedback do we wish to see? And so that we can design a survey that allows for that feedback to come back to council administration. You know, again, these surveys are designed to support and to help the decision-making process. And right now, we're getting that feedback, but it's not clear what we're doing with it. So we need to provide some clarity and some transparency throughout the entire process. And make sure we're asking questions, again, that is going to provide feedback that is going to support that process. So we just need to clean things up a little bit more and make sure that, that we actually want this feedback. What are we going to do with this feedback? You know, I've included it here in the report, the International Association for Public Participation is a global group that specifies and works specifically with public participation. And basically, there's a couple of quotes in there, but if you don't want the answers, don't ask the questions. And if you're going to ask the questions, you better be prepared to do something with the answers. And it could be as simple as, we're asking for this feedback. Not that I would suggest we do this, but being transparent, and we're going to get this feedback, but we're not planning to do anything specifically with it. It's more of a gauge. But whatever we do with the feedback, we have to be transparent and clear. And we've done a pretty good job, but again, I think what is lacking is a clear direction as to what we want from this. We've been specifically focused on budget strategy over the last few years, as opposed to citizen satisfaction. And I think when it comes down to asking specifically about budget and not the community as a whole, there's some holes in that. And I don't know if it provides the best possible feedback for council and administration. So we just want to seek some direction there in terms of what we want to do with this.
All right, councillors, if we can go around, I see Councillor Mearns and then Councillor Payne. And Councillor Dakin. All right, Councillor Mearns said you were first, so you get to go first, Councillor Payne.
Okay. Jared, how long has it been since we've done a citizen satisfaction survey?
2018 was the last one we did, a full citizen satisfaction survey.
If I remember correctly, we used that information quite a bit. Like, at least it would come back to us quite frequently, and I think I looked at that document for years after. So I think with a citizen satisfaction survey, for me personally, it helps me to frame what I'm thinking, because if I just look at what's generally given to us, whether it's by email or by word of mouth or some other communication, or heaven forbid we look at social media, you really don't get an appropriate swath of citizens. What you end up getting is the extremes. And it's hard to make decisions based on the extremes. So I think for me personally, and I'm not going to speak for the rest of council, but for me personally, I would love to see a citizen satisfaction survey where we sit down and go through what we really want to hear. Like, what do we want to know? Because I think you're exactly right, Jared. I think don't ask the question unless you really want to know the answer, and do something with it when you get the answer. So I do really want to know the answer. I do really want to know what people think, because I don't think what we hear in social media or what we hear from the polarized ends is really what people think. I do also think that we need a bigger number of people that are surveyed. I think in a population of 17,000 people, if we hear from 250, that's not enough. So whatever we need to do to increase that number, I think, is important as well.
Councillor Mearns, did you have? You're next.
Yeah, further to Councillor Payne's, what he's mentioned, I would agree on the satisfaction survey. I think, and it's speculation, but people hear budget survey and they click next and go to something different because it's budget survey. It doesn't really get a lot of people excited. There's some that get excited about it, but if it's a satisfaction survey and we have the right questions, I think it's a valuable tool as council, as we strategic plan, as we do things and set priorities. It's easy to refer to. We're doing this because this is what the community said, right? So I would fully support that. And on top of that, I think something we could do internally. I saw your estimated budget, but it could be quite a bit bigger than that. You know, I've seen the work that administration's done with the budget survey and the results and how that's presented, and understand it's a lot of work, but I think it's something we could do internally.
Councillor Dakin.
Everyone knows I don't like surveys, but you know, 401 actually is the number that 395 is the number that you have to reach for a 95% accurate.
Plus or minus, yeah.
Yeah, but I really like the impact of having our boards up, like at the community event that we did at the NextSource. I think that was the most true polling that we did, really. If we could get something like that, you know, where Parks and Open Spaces Master Plan, I think it was, where people were putting their marks on the thing. If that was at some of our events, like, you know, the Lumberjack, whatever it's called, days, and 1913 days, and Flannel and Feast Festival, thank you. And the board was up and people were just walking by and being able to answer. I think that kind of survey is the most impactful. People who react to emails or phones have to be motivated. Otherwise, you're wasting their time. So, yes, I do want to see it, but I want to see it not from a third party calling people. I really don't. And the more responses, the merrier for me.
Councillor Parsons?
Well, I like a community satisfaction survey for sure. But I'm a third-party guy, as you said, like that's what I saw, is let the pros do it. Oh, because if we're asking the questions, if we're asking them to do a survey, you only get the people, they won't, you don't get a true number unless, I just think the pros do it. Councillor Mearns and I were at FCM, and Abacus gave a presentation on how they surveyed the election, and they were bang on. They had everything lined up. CAO Dawn was there, and the pros really did a good job. So, if we're going to do a survey, let's let the pros do it.
Councillor Rilling.
I remember yesterday at the meeting, Mayor Hansen, you said something about surveys. I'm not sure I totally understood it, but you seemed intrigued by the way they presented it. So is this the time to ask that question?
Yeah, I was feeling passionate yesterday about surveys. I think the community satisfaction survey gets us closer to that more accurate information because you're not asking just about budget, because then people are upset or for the budget. It gives us more of a well-rounded bit of feedback, and we could ask all kinds of different things. So I think that is important. I don't know what that schedule is. Because of the cost, 3 years might be too soon. But I do think it's important to do that, and I'd love to really spend some time as council and then with professional recommendations on how to get to those proper questions. I see sometimes we've, I'll say, the last census, we wanted to ask some questions, and we threw a couple on there, and we got some interesting information, but maybe that was kind of because we thought this is our only opportunity to ask these types of questions, and maybe we didn't go through that process in as thoughtful a way as what we maybe could have to get really usable data out of it. So yeah, I like that direction. I think we have to do a lot of work on what those questions look like, and hopefully this is more accurate because it's not just a one issue. And working with a company and using those different means to gather the data might make it more accurate. But yeah, it blew me away by how much it could be skewed by just having a select group fill it out that have a special interest in the project we're asking about. So I don't know whether it's the one-off survey or whether there's a different way to do this, but. Yeah.
And Councillor Oostende, do you have anything to say? Yes, I do. One thing I was thinking about is keeping the engage ongoing, because people are getting used to it, and we've kind of, we've created an expectation and a pattern and a venue for people to express thoughts. So having some feedback specific to budget, I kind of like having that on the engage if it's not too much pressure on the budget to continue that work every year. The idea of pure satisfaction surveys drive me nuts because I had too much experience with public education. Government was constantly measuring satisfaction, and it drove me nuts. Every year we had these surveys, and it was just a game we played. Anyways, that's a little too much cynicism. But what we're talking about here is more than satisfaction survey. from what I'm hearing, I haven't had the experience around this table with those results, but it sounds like it was more than just, oh, are we satisfied or not? We were digging, sounds like we were digging into the topics. I can see the, I think it was Councillor Dakin mentioned the master plans as one area of pulling out questions, because these master plans have so many ideas. What are the priorities of the community? That interests me. I know what my priorities are in the master plans. And strategic plan, I'm not sure if anybody mentioned as well, that could be a place to find questions about what is the priority of the community on the topics that we felt were strategic as a community. So I could see the survey being built partly from those documents, plus whatever those consultants might bring to the table too. Mr. Waldo?
Yeah, so I think that, you know, Councillor Dakin makes a good point. You know, there are a lot of things we can do. I mean, a survey is just a tool, and it doesn't have to be the only thing that we do. It can help to complement other things that we do. We do have the engagement opportunities, like the information fair. We have a lot of opportunities that we could take advantage of that we're not currently. Even chatting with council could be an opportunity to have things set up. Certainly. You know, the biggest challenge with, so Councillor Parsons was right, having professionals do it is a wonderful option. There's only one problem, and it's kind of a big one, is the cost associated with doing it. So that one is challenging, but it is the wish of council. If they wish to include that in the budget, we can certainly include that moving forward. But it is a barrier. Certainly the staff time to do it internally, there's some internal costs there. However, it is something that we can do as part of a plan, if council so wishes, to build more than just a survey. So if we want to have more of a internal plan around how we're garnering feedback, and with the ultimate goal in mind to all of these pieces are going to combine together as a general plan to be presented to council for their consideration at budget time or before budget. I mean, in a perfect world, it would be in advance of budget, so that information is available to review prior to and not during, so that there is more opportunity to use it, to ask questions, to gauge, and also for administration to use as well, so that if we are presenting, this is the direction we went based off this data, based off this feedback, which you also have at your disposal. So now there's more things happening to support and use this data, and now it's a lot of data-driven decision-making based on feedback from the public, and not just one tool, perhaps a few different ones.
I'm wondering about frequency of, I'm hearing a consensus from us to say, yeah, we're very interested in the larger survey. I don't even want to use the word satisfaction, but I will try to use it once in a while. The frequency, from my own perspective, I think about it being once per term would be a minimum, or maybe that's the frequency. I can see how 1 in every 3 years would certainly hit every term, but maybe that came from the old terms being 3 years. Now they're 4 years. I can't remember when that changed, but that was one thought I had. Mr. Waldo?
Yeah, I was just going to add, and there is such thing as survey fatigue, right? So you don't want to be asking the same questions over and over and over again, where residents start to develop apathy because I've answered this many times. And so you want to be careful with that too. So those opportunities that are available, be it at events or specific pop-ups that are designated for those, you just want to be careful, which is why we want to have a proper plan to gauge the right feedback. Again, it's all about supporting some of our decisions that we're making to lead the community.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from councillors? Do you have enough feedback from us?
Yes and no. I think there's enough feedback in terms of building a plan moving forward. However, for this upcoming cycle, there may not be enough time to build a full plan to have that data for the upcoming budget cycle. So if council so wishes, we can continue to do what we've done the last few years, or we could make some amendments and changes to that. If we were to do that, it would be something that we'd want to get out sooner than later. As we do enter the summer season, people start to, as you know, kind of take a step back from the real world and enjoy life away, but also be able to get something out with enough time to garner feedback prior to entering the budget cycle for 2026.
And the question for me is that within our budget abilities right now, that your department has enough to do something expanded? Is that what I'm hearing then?
We can do, again, similar to last year, we can expand it a little bit. We just, again, with whatever we do, we want to make sure we're asking the right questions to get the feedback that we're looking for.
Yeah. Councillor Mearns?
We have an agenda item coming up where we may be pushing our budget cycle out a bit. So my assumption is that would help better prepare you.
Yeah, I was going to stick around for that one. Yes, absolutely.
Is there an interest in expanding a little bit internally what we do? Can we do even a thumbs up survey right now? Yeah, having a bit more expansion, not necessarily the full-blown customer satisfaction, but yeah. So I'm seeing a consensus to go a little further with it.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Okay.
can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone, and Mr. Waldo. Yeah. Okay. As we transition to the next item, I'm going to run and grab a cup of water, which takes me about 30 seconds. But our next item is going to be the review and, or actually, do we need a break right now, or can we go a bit further? What am I? Yeah. Okay, we're going to take, should it be 5 minutes or 10 minutes? I can eat a sandwich in 3 minutes, so. Okay, so we are going to take our break right now for approximately, we'll say 5:08, just over 5 minutes. 5:08 because it's 5:02 on the clock. All right, calling back to order now. We're going to start our next item on page 103, Customer Conduct Policy Development. And our famous Roxanne Gerard.
Good afternoon,
lead this.
Council. Thank you. So you have in front of you a report and a draft policy that administration was asked to bring forward with regards to something that looked like a customer conduct policy, as we had seen samples from other municipalities. So with that, I have prepared a draft for you, looking for some feedback from council on a couple of pieces. Specifically, we talked a little bit about maybe not necessarily wanting to use the word customer in the language, and so I've named this policy as a draft respectful interactions policy. We talk about all the people who might be affected by it, but there's not anything really directed to council. Council's included, but it's not directed to council in response to the changes that we've seen with the provincial legislation. And then in this draft, I haven't also gotten specific or prescriptive in terms of actual actions that may occur and what we might respond with in terms of penalties. And I think the rationale for that is this is intended for those one-off moments, those times where something happens and we need to know we have a policy to rely on. We have our health and safety policy to rely on for certain like safe work practices in terms of when something becomes where we're very concerned about our safety, our personal safety. There's a threat to people, and that's not quite what this addresses. So it allows that. We also have our policy that is for frivolous and vexatious complaints. So to me, this doesn't need to go to the extent of that policy, which is when we are seeing repeated behavior and that it's being documented and we're getting to a point where now we have to provide very specific actions to control that behavior. So we have two policies that we have one in place right now for extreme behavior. I feel that this policy, if we want to call it respectful interactions, can address those one-offs where people are just, they're not being respectful in their interactions with council staff. And if it's with the public, of course, we're going to be using some other policies if our staff are not respecting the public. So I'm looking for some feedback.
Okay. Councillor Payne is quick on the hand this evening.
Well, you know, I just got a thought about this.
Yeah.
I'm not a policy guy, to be honest. I kind of hate policy. But is this one that's really actually needed? Like, I would think that it would just be, normal. Just don't be a jerk. You know, and as Mr. McIntyre often says, jerks will jerk, but you know, is this one that we need a policy for? Because, you know, if we have policy, it then means we have to enforce policy. And yeah, like I said, not really much of a policy guy, more of a common sense guy.
Oh, I'll say I love policy if it's useful. And my gut feeling is, Councillor Parsons added, we would think it would be common sense, but I think Facebook has proven us wrong, that it isn't common sense. But I see some more hands, and I'll make other quick comment on it too after. Councillor Rilling?
I mean, to me, I just really wonder if we need, I mean, how do we enforce a policy like this? Because then there's just so many levels of what I think is disrespectful may not be disrespectful in, you know, I'm just being direct. So then who defines that? And would it mean we'd have to do a whole lot of policing and creating, like people have to kind of be mediating and all of those sorts of things? So I don't know, I'm always afraid of creating a policy, like Councillor Payne said, that we have to enforce, but to me, it's such a, there are just so many levels of, personality and the way people respond, they're in a bad place, like all of those things. So how will that be taken into account, I guess? And I wouldn't want to be the person who has to make that judgment call. And that would be a big one. And it could get, I don't know. I guess I just wonder if we're not putting people in a worse place because the other ones are the big ones. And they're obvious, but this could be so gray. That's what concerns me about a policy like this.
Did you want to respond to that question, or we can gather some more thoughts up?
Well, I'll just add a comment, is that what we were looking for was something that we could use in the event of the public acting in a way that was not respectful. In common sense, was not the way we treat each other. I don't think we should have to have a policy like this either, but I think having something in place perhaps that is specific to the public. We have our respectful workplace where we're using that one for internal, and there's pieces in there for how our staff act, but it doesn't really speak to how the public acts, I guess, from an enforcement side of things, and that's where we landed on something that was more customer conduct related.
Mm-hmm. Okay, see, Mayor Hansen.
This one's a tough one because I agree. I don't like more policy than what we need, and I think it's ridiculous that we have to have it, but I can just speak to experience. Just in this term on council, I've been spit on. I've been told that someone was warming up their shotgun for me, and a few other alarming things. Now, there are other ways we can deal with that. So that's really where it weighs for me. I think that this could make sense. I've got a couple of suggestions on it as one of the options. We also, the community standards bylaw, well, it talks about spitting, but not on humans. There could be some RCMP action. Like, there are other opportunities to deal with that. I'll say it's a bit awkward when those happen within the context of a budget open house or a other kind of public event. So this does give that middle ground that you're not having to call the RCMP, but you're not just saying, oh, well, that was a tough night at work, let's do nothing about it. It gives us an additional tool that we shouldn't have to use. So I am in favor of it. I'm frustrated that we have to have it as even a conversation, but I do think that this is an interim step towards some of these things that probably could have been brought to another level, but let's be real, I am never going to do that, and I don't believe that most people who sit around this table would take it to that next step, because is it so bad that it deserves that attention? So, yeah.
Councillor Payne.
I'm not going to vote against the policy because it's there, but the reality of it is having the policy is not going to get you spit on less. It's not going to get you yelled at less. It's not going to get you barked at in Walmart. It's still going to be the same world we live in, because we're expecting the rest of the world to follow this policy, and jerks are going to jerk. So, you know, it's great. I hope a lot of time didn't go into doing this. I hope this was one of those things that we found and we manipulated. It was easy because, you know, I think it's sad that the world needs something like this, but I don't think it's going to radically change the way we do things. Because jerks are going to jerk.
Yeah. Councillor Mearns and then Ms.
So this is not just for council, it's also for administration, correct?
Staff. For staff as well, it's noted.
I do like that this has, I think it's something that it's for those one-offs in those moments where we are actually empowering staff here too, like just saying, here's what we expect from you. And then take it to your supervisor. the extent that we might have to go with restricting services will be on a one-off basis.
And I think, like, personally, me as an elected official, I expect some of the stuff not to be spit on, but some other things, and it's kind of like it comes with the territory. But I like how this is also for staff that are out mowing grass or picking up garbage, or, you know, if there's that verbal abuse or a threat or something, it gives them something to go back to their manager and say, hey, we've got a policy for this, I'm concerned, etc. So I can 100% support it, based on it's not just us, it's all of our staff that are able to have something and feel safe and protected because of it.
Ms. Phillips,
I just wanted to add that, so this policy I actually borrowed from another municipality in my previous municipality, and then brought it here after a conversation around health and safety that the policy doesn't protect council, was how it all started. But I can tell you that in the municipal world, with the CAOs and at our conferences, this is a big conversation, is the disrespect that's happening in council chambers with residents getting more aggressive, certain, you know, organizations and groups coming in and advocating for, you know, the variety of, you know, groups out there, right? And that sometimes it is getting a little bit excessive. So this would give us that opportunity, as respect to council, because you're right, we have a respect in the workplace policy that does largely protect us as well. But this would give us the opportunity that if somebody was in this room and they were being above and beyond, right? Just where we felt we need to take a recess, we need to, you know, this person needs to leave the room for whatever reason. And then it would be staff, it wouldn't be council, right? Because this is your policy that then empowers us to do it. But we could then ban someone from council meetings for a period of time because they can still attend virtually. And they can still pay we can ban them from the building, so, and say, because you can still pay online. So it would be a rare instance. So there's, you know, that's kind of the backing behind it. It's just that it's becoming more and more common in unfortunately, the municipal world. The other option would be to hold on to it and have it there in case we ever needed to bring it forward to adopt it, but then it might be beyond that point where that one aggressive person comes in and we needed that policy. That was the thought behind it, is just to protect the integrity of our council chambers.
yeah. Councillor Parsons.
Okay, unfortunately, it's the world we're in now. And it's, people are getting angry, and I personally blame social media for it, but that's another story. I was in the most dangerous job in the world right now is the reception at the Nexor Center. And I happened to be there this morning when I came in just kind of in the middle, and it was a guy I knew quite well, and he had just ripped the side off of the more inexperienced girl on a booking for the community center, and it was a mistake that he had made, but and there was language, I didn't hear it, but apparently she was pretty shook up, and Caitlin came from the back and took the guy and did all of the stay calm, all of the points here, and the guy went away, got it all done, but I saw it firsthand. Around the horseshoe here, we've seen it all the time, and we're all in a position where we've been in that as councillors, as people, but our staff, to me, it's more for our staff, it's not for us. And it would be here and probably the front desk here, or front desk next door. Any front desk, frontline people are the ones in a municipality that really take the brunt of a lot. So that's why we need a policy.
Councillor Dakin, thank you.
On page 106, under definitions, D, I just think it would be important for us to really clearly define two things. What is excessive communication? What does that mean? Is that 3 emails? Is that 5? Is that, you know, what does that mean?
Right, and so in using that description and knowing that we also have this frivolous and vexatious complaints policy that talks about repeated continuous, like it goes into quite a bit of detail. Okay. So this could be, you know, to me, this would be before you get to this point for the frivolous and vexatious complaints. I don't think there's a defined number.
Right, that's the area where I say, who is the one deciding? That's the only sticking point for me. This is important. But it has to be really well defined so that we know the parameters of the rules.
Yeah, and again, I think this is in my mind, when I compare the two policies, this is where, okay, you've come here 2 or 3 times to talk about this, and we've told you this is what the policy is. Right. That frivolous and vexatious is where it's continuous, it's ongoing, it's taking staff time, it really gets into detail. This is to be able to address it from, even you've asked me 3 times.
3 times, so it's 3 times?
I don't know, like, it depends what it would be.
Okay.
In my mind,
right.
You know, there's a certain point where it's like, how many times will we explain this?
That's what I'm worried about.
And then I think the way this is written it is ambiguous.
For sure.
Because I think it will depend on what it's about.
Situationally. Who the person is, where the story came from. That's too bad.
And this, well, no, like and I think as we, like with any policy, as we implement it, that's where we might realize, okay, we need more clarity around this, or we might need to adjust that. I think too, and I love how the frivolous and vexatious complaints policy refers to, this isn't to shut down difficult problems.
No, of course.
Right? And the same with this, it wouldn't be to shut it down, as if someone comes with a different approach, or like we are public servants, and we know how we are expected to engage with the public.
Okay.
So I don't think there'd be anyone in administration using this to end an interaction early. I think there'd be it's a point to be able to use this policy when there's nowhere else to go. Yeah. But I do think that is going to be subjective.
It's the subjectiveness that I'm worried about, that's all.
Yeah, just speaking to that subjectiveness, thinking about, if I had a brain injury and I keep asking the same question every day, that's a different context. And hopefully they're just kind to me because I have a brain injury. And I can ask the same question every day I come to the next source center in hopefully a friendly tone. But someone who is super intelligent but keeps talking about they're going to bring their lawyer, and they keep asking the same question every day about why can't I bring my dog into the swimming pool? That's just a totally different context. So yeah, I can see why it's hard to define, but context is everything in communication. Mayor Hansen, did you have one too after? Yeah, okay.
I was just going to request a definition of the word staff. It's not in the definitions, but it's mentioned repeatedly in procedures. And I'm not, in A it mentions staff and council, but every other portion just says staff. So whether it's a definition that council be included with staff, or that it say staff and council every time, or just that one word flagged for me. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mearns? Okay, and I had one other minor edit question. Is it an issue under the responsibilities Chief Administrative Officer and Human Resources Department both ensure the policy and procedures are followed? Is there any issue having both of those, not so much positions, one's a position, one's a department, both having that same responsibility? That's an open question. Yeah.
So I think that is throughout all of the staff.
Okay.
Now, Human Resources is advisory. Maybe it's not Human Resources' role to ensure that the policy and procedures are followed, updated, maintained.
Yeah. And we're just looking at draft right now, so I
Yes.
just let that go until the next, when you come back with it as a policy, then we'll know what your answer is. Any other questions or thoughts? I don't think I said that I support the policy, but I support the policy with tweaks and some issues that could be clarified. Councillor Rilling.
One thing I thought that was really good under procedures is staff and council orientations. You know, like I thought that is really good to have as part of that. You know, just explaining it and making it clear, both for responsibility and accountability. I think it's great, and to me, you can't do what it's like. It's common sense, but it's good to state it so then responsibility can be accounted for.
Okay, seeing no other comments, any question that you have for us still? No, yes, this is the feedback that we got from council, and that we are then looking for policies going forward that doesn't get too restricted in terms of scenarios and consequences. Okay, thank you, Mr. Gerard. We will jump to the next item, which is found on page 110, review and update of CAO performance review policy, and that I believe is Mr. Gerard again.
Okay, council, we have prepared the updated policy for the CAO review for your consideration and presentation at a future council meeting. If you have any questions with regards to the policy as it's been updated, can help you with that. Mostly it was, as noted in the report, a few naming conventions and some procedure updates.
Any questions that came up? Seeing none, I had none either. Everything looked appropriate. Mayor Henson?
I'll just draw attention to, I don't see any concerns. This is really a bit more consistent with our practice because we haven't been following policy. But I also appreciate we have put a little bit of extra work onto our HR department within this just to help guide our timeline. And that will just ensure that we're kept on track and that we're not doing any last minute scrambling, as sometimes happens when this is left fully up to the mayor to direct the process. So I appreciate that we've delegated just a little bit of that scheduling portion, and then everything else is consistent with the practice that we've had for the last number of years. It's just updating. So thank you for the work on this.
Perfect.
Another sign of growing up. All right, thank you, Ms. Gerard. And our next item is page 118, grant writing review. And looks like we have two reporting for us. Yeah. All right, you hit your mics and take it over for us.
Thank you, Council. Good evening. So this report, we wanted to clear up any misunderstanding or lack of knowledge on the grant writing process and what's transpired in the last, I guess, couple of years with that position. So just to kind of clear that up for council, make it clear what's kind of transpired and what's currently happening, and for council to provide some direction going forward, if they so wish, tonight on how to handle grant writing here for the town and the community for that matter. So, so just going back a couple of years, so the town created a grant writer position in the budget for the 2023 fiscal year. An individual was hired for the position, but left the employment of the town the following year. So during the 2025 budget preparation, was determined that in order to kind of reduce the pressure on the tax rate and the taxpayers, that this function could be kind of handled internally, shared amongst some people and departments. And so it was not filled for the 2025, it was not put in the budget for the 2025 budget year. Funding for the position was not allocated to anything specific. It was just kind of kept, thrown back in the pot, if you will, and reallocated to other initiatives in the operating budget for that year. The year we are in. So it was based, like I said, based on the idea that that function of grant writing and tracking could best be handled by individual departments. Each department has the knowledge and resources to write grants and handle the reporting during and after completion of the grant. So today we feel administratively that this initiative has worked well with enhanced interdepartmental collaboration and improved grant tracking and reporting. Collaboration across departments during proposal development has proven to ensure consistency, and they've been able to effectively tailor the narrative of the grants writing to reflect the organization's mission as they have a better understanding of the long-term strategy, culture, and goals of the town. And I think I'm kind of going into my next part here. So, as a result, proposals have become part of a broader strategic development effort. In-house experts possess a deep understanding of the project's goals, methodologies, and potential impact. And they're able to respond with precision to high technical or discipline-specific questions that external writers may not necessarily be able to do. So there are professional grant writers that do bring technical writing expertise, but they often, we feel, lack the depth of knowledge and alignment with organizational goals, long-term strategic benefits that our in-house experts may have. Additionally, current staff have the ability to respond to last-minute changes or clarification requests without delays from others for grant applications that have tight deadlines and quick turnarounds. Go ahead, Mac.
Thanks. So yes, within our WCC department, they have been quite active working with external groups. Myself, I've worked with a few of them, specifically the playgrounds with the schools, and walked them through some of the process and offer to assist them once they have their grant application written for our department to go through it and provide any recommendations. So WCC does quite a bit. They have most recently worked with the Men's Shed, so they did help them fill out the micro grant through the town, but they've also applied or helped them apply in external groups and organizations to apply for funding with them, and that has been quite successful. So Mandy, within her role, is leading workshops on how to write grants, so she has one planned for the fall, and that's not a one-off, so it's something that they plan on continuing to offer in the future, in addition to the other board, I would say, training opportunities that they've been offering. So they offer things on like how to run a successful board and their meeting structures and handling the volunteers and assisting them in all those pieces. So the grant writing is just one component. And again, they continually help groups. And so that is one thing that we can do more of, if council wishes, is to promote that a little bit more, what we can do in-house. Now, there are companies that will assist the groups with their grant writing, and so most recently we have reached out to Alberta Council. They originally had two separate models. Right now they're only offering the one, which is the project-based model, and they take 1.5% of the reporting fee on any secured funds for any grants that groups are successful on. They previously had a different model where you can pay, it was $500 per month, and they would write the grants, and then it was a 0.5% fee from the grants that they would take as a commission base. So they are not operating with that model right now. Right now they only have the project-based one, so it's 1.5%. That is something the town can take advantage of. So we can utilize them for any grants that are maybe outside of our expertise, and then we fill in all those gaps. And then the community groups are also able to access this with that 1% model. So we do have a few options for council, and we're really looking for some feedback from council on how council would like us to proceed. I have supplied
the spreadsheet for you. I apologize, in your council package, it's atrocious. It did not come out properly, so you have the sheet in front of you, and it's all really well laid out. So this is a document that the departments have been working on and that we plan on supplying to council if council wishes on a regular basis so that you can access this. We have heard from council that you want to know what grants we're applying for so that when you are going to meetings that you can help to advocate for some funding. And if we're not successful, you can also help us in those regards. So that's the purpose of creating this. We had created this originally internally just so that we had some good tracking. Helps us with our tracking when we have provincial or federal funding to ensure that the proper notifications are being made. And then it also helps us see what are we applying for, what are we successful at, what are we not successful at, and helps us to determine if there are gaps in any funding. So we have laid this out here in the different sections. Some of them are multi-year, so we have indicated that. Some of them is, funding right off the hop. Some is over multiple years, so we've tried our best to include that here. We did include anything that was in progress. We thought it was important that council could see. We just haven't heard back yet on some of those grants, so that's why it says in progress. We also thought it was important to showcase the lead departments. It's important to note because if we just had, grants that were available to one department and we could see, there's a level of expertise that we need here, maybe it makes sense to hire somebody just in that area. But when you're looking through all the departments, planning and development or public works or recreation, whatever the case may be, it's so vastly different. It is difficult to hire somebody with that level of expertise in all areas. When we originally hired the grant coordinator, we thought this is great, it's going to work really well. He started working on the half funding, and yes, he was able to search the information, get the portal set up and figure out what we needed to do, but P&D had to do all of the work. The grant writer is not an expert in half funding. And so that was one of the things that we learned quickly on. And then he left the position relatively early. So we didn't have a really good, solid year of figuring things out. I mean, when you're applying for a grant, you might be applying today. You don't find out for 6 months or 9 months. Sometimes it's deferred, right? So it's really hard to track how successful that position was without, some long-term data. The way that we're looking at this is we're seeing, okay, the departments are applying for the funding. Either they're successful, finding out why we're not successful. So on the one, for example, the NRED grant that ECDEV applied for, there's such a huge ask, and we're seeing that across the board now with so many grants. There's so many municipalities and groups that are applying for grants, and the funding is limited. So we have some learning in those regards, and figuring out what we need to do better on some of that, and sometimes it's those partnerships. So the CFEP grant was a great example of that, working with the Nautical Swim Club. As a municipality, we are not eligible, but we've created those partnerships and those relationships with the groups, and then we can work with them on the grants. And with that grant, we wrote the entire grant. So I wrote that grant. I did not expect them to go through except for providing me some of their financial information and their officers, for example. We do all of that work. And so the same would go forward, when we're working with Picador Park, we would work with those groups to get that done as well. So in your package, you can see there's a variety of options for council. And so Darren and I are looking forward to hearing council's wishes.
Mayor Hansen, and I can jump in if nobody else.
Questions and comments. Before I go into the future, I have some backwards looking questions, and talks about that. So we approved the grant writing position. We went another direction. So the funding for the position was reallocated to other initiatives. We advertised to the public, we're getting this grant writing position. What did they get instead? So I guess specifically, what did that funding go to? And how can we do a better job? So that's, I guess, part one of the question. How can we do a better job of communicating those changes when it's something that we've advertised? It was a talking point in that budget cycle for me. So, how do we advertise that better, I guess? And what did the public get instead? Because we told them this is what it was.
So I will defer the budget question to Darren, but I can answer what the public got instead. The public got the exact same thing. So the public didn't know that the individual's name that was hired for the grant position. So when we did get questions, it was either funneled through WCC if they asked WCC, or myself, and we assisted them in that way. So there was no change looking on the public side. So we still assisted them the same way.
Get to the budget one, and then I've got a little bit more to this, but.
Yeah, just regarding the budget side of it, just as I mentioned earlier, it wasn't really allocated to anything specifically. It was just taken out, and the funds were used to kind of help, you know, reduce the pressure on the tax rate as part of the process. So, yeah.
So I guess maybe my request is that there be a way to have that conversation differently in the future. And then my specific comments to this is, I think the town does a great job when it comes to grant writing internally. It is fantastic. We are so successful. I love this chart. I hope that becomes something that we get to see somewhat regularly. We have fantastic skills in so many different departments when it comes to this. I would love that we can offer those same skills community-wide, whether that be that we advertise to community groups that we're able to support them in this way in a really loud way, or whether we help share with them and connect them with the Alberta Council program or a different way to do that, because I'd love to see the same success and potentially some tracking when it comes to how we're able to support external groups in writing these, and how we can really be proactive in that. You know, when a group comes to us, I'll use the playgrounds for an example, and says, hey, we're trying to build this playground. What could that step be in connecting them to say, that's great, maybe the town can provide funding, maybe we can't, but here's 10 grants that we can help you, or 2 grants we can help you apply for to help you achieve the same goal, so that it doesn't always come from municipal funds. So yeah, I'd love to see that public side of it expanded. Doesn't necessarily have to be through a position if we have capacity to do that through our current staff, and we just need to talk about it more and really offer that service, or if it's a connection to someone else.
Yes, Mayor Hansen, that is exactly what we're already doing. So I agree with you. We can definitely make that a little bit more public. And with the work that we're doing on our new website, I'm sure that there's a way that we can put additional communication on there. The work that WCC is doing with the workshops, we can just bring that all together. When the groups did come to us, so for example, the playground, I had that exact conversation with one of the principals. And so I did, in our research of grants that we're already doing, would send them some grants. So the CFEP, I think it was SIP, sorry, the one that they had applied for, they already had known about it. That was the only one that was open at the time. So it does depend what is open when they are looking, and for them to come to us early. But we can certainly add some information to the website to make that more public. We're already doing it. We might as well let them know on a grander scale.
I'll throw a thought in as well, question. When I was just looking at the math, it seemed like we had to be successful with about, or fewer than $6 million worth of grant awards, and then it was cheaper to get someone else to do it for us because they only take a small percentage. However, when I read, sort of feel like I'm reading between the lines of the report, it seems to me that administration is quite happy with the way it's going, because it's not just about a cheaper model, it's about the fact that you're doing the work anyways, even if you have an outside grant writer or a company or an internal person. So it wasn't as efficient as we might have imagined a grant writer to be. The only concern, and I support the idea of like carrying on the work as is. The only concern I wrote to my own notes really was about, Mayor Hansen really touched on it already, is that how does the public know, and can the public still access that support? And speaking from, Seniors Association point of view, having been very unsuccessful for years now on receiving any grant, it's a real interest by these community groups to know how can we access some grants. And I know our connections as an association are through WCC, and we've actually been, because of that relationship, we've indirectly received some grant money support from WCC. However, to really move the association forward, we need that support, and I see that with so many other potential groups around town. So that would be my only concern is I'm comfortable with going with what I'm reading between the lines. However, how do we emphasize that public groups, I should say. Any other councillor thoughts? Councillor Dakin.
Thank you. I just want to first say I really appreciate all the work that you're doing, helping the external groups get some funding. It's awesome. Second thing is that I remember when we looked at this on the budget and everyone was quite excited about that budget line because it was somebody that would be in-house and it would pay for itself. And I struggle going back and forth between using a third party or using somebody in-house. Maybe that first person just wasn't a fit. That happens. You know, that's always why you rehire and try again. But I struggle between the two because if they won't have a really good pulse or understanding on us, if they're external, they might not be as passionate to write it or as, you know, but yes, sure, maybe the ones that the person we hire is not an expert of, keep that program, the 1.5%, send it over there. I am partial to having somebody in-house and trying that again, for sure. The last point that I was thinking about was Mayor Hansen's comment about if we hire somebody for a role or if we have a budget line for something and that thing can't happen and then the money goes back into Zed, could you let us know when that decision's made that that budget line isn't going to be spent because it didn't work out and where that money's going to go now so that when we have those conversations, it's easier for us? Is that possible? Is that what I'm hearing, Mayor Hansen? Okay.
Yeah. Ms. Phillips?
And that's why we're bringing it back to council, is there was a motion of council, and since we veered from that, the communication, we needed to make sure that got back to council, because otherwise we should still, right, we should be still doing it. So that was part of that. As we had that discussion, we realized that part didn't happen. So that's why we're bringing it here, is to say we're not doing the motion of council, and since we're supposed to do the motion of council, we're saying this is our direction now, updating you. So are you okay with this? And in the future, yes.
One question, and then Councillor Payne. Regarding, like WCC does a lot of grants, and so does tourism, recreation, tourism, and culture. In effect, does WCC have a key person in their department that does most of the grants, or in your own? It sounds like you do quite a bit for your department. Or is it spread out across? And is that the most efficient? Is that what they're communicating, that each one has its own specialty? Like I know we have a seniors coordinator, we have a youth coordinator, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, exactly. So Brittany Wells, for example, in WCC, she is works with older adults, so it makes sense that she's working on some of those grants. The CFIP grant, so our grant coordinator started that process because that was years in the making, collected the information for me, and then said, I can't write this, I don't know anything about swimming pool filter tanks and circulation systems and the doors that you need. And so I had to write all of those pieces. Same thing with the HAF funding. They don't know anything about planning. And so for the schools, for example, it was easy for me to step up from a recreation standpoint to help them. When it's tourism, a tourism initiative from one of our local businesses, it makes sense that the tourism department is picking up those pieces within my department. In Public Works, they know everything when it comes to the infrastructure pieces, so it makes sense for them to write it. So depending on what the community group is looking at applying for, we would match up the expertise amongst the town. Makes the most sense to be the most successful.
Thank you. Councillor Payne and then Mayor Hansen.
Okay, I got a couple of things. So just reading through the report, would combining the grant writer position with the procurement position create an efficiency that needs to be created, or is that kind of a convenient possibility? My first question, so start with that one.
It was, yeah, it was an idea that was suggested through the chair to create some efficiencies and some coordination there amongst the departments and that role. So it might be best, I guess, to have it one role. So, you know, I think that it could work. It's a way to kind of help both departments in that regard. So it was just, yeah, one suggestion.
Is it a need, Darren?
Which one?
The procurement?
Well, we have kind of felt that way for a few years, but, you know, it hasn't made it to the top of the list. You know, so I guess this is a start to see how, you know, we could make it work and provide some relief to, you know, what's happening now, to the departments, managers, et cetera, in the area of procurement, so.
Okay. My other question is completely unrelated to that. Over the last several days, I've had lots of conversations about Pagodl and about funding. And one of the talking points that I've had is, you know, the contingent upon the grant for the soccer pitches. But I don't see any, I don't see that grant on here. Is that one that's not been applied for? Is it in progress? Is it just missing, or is that kind of a pipe dream grant?
So no, it would not be a pipe dream grant. CFEP has two different streams, and so there's a small stream and the large stream, and so it's just the timing on it. So for example, when we applied for the filter tanks, it's quite a long process, and so just the timing of when it opens up. So you have to submit your letter of intent, get approved, and then be able to apply for the grant. So there is a time period in between there. So likely Mr. Lovesack is working with those groups in order to apply, but the deadline hasn't hit yet. So if I can clarify, in progress means that we have applied and it's sitting on the desk of whoever is the funder. That's what that means. It means that we have done everything on our part. The grant has been fully submitted. So I should have clarified that off the hop. That's what that means.
Excuse me, Mayor Hansen.
I feel bad going back to a budget question. I want to be very clear. So when projects are budgeted, of course, we see the increase that comes through the budget spreadsheet. It's the one-time cost. When positions are budgeted, is it not, then that funding builds from year to year. Once we've approved it 1 year, it's in there every year after year. So have we removed that position for all years after the first year, or are we still receiving that baseline funding when that position was included? I don't know that I asked that correctly, but I hope you can.
Yeah, so in regards to this particular position, yeah, it has been removed like for all years going forward. Mm-hmm. So
did we see, I guess, a credit or a reduction, because it was a tax dollar increase to put that on there. Mm-hmm. When we remove the position, future years, that should show a decrease in the tax rate, I guess, in that same percentage. Did we see that, and was that factored in future years, or was it just absorbed and we've continued to fund that amount even though the position isn't there?
Yeah, well, I think so. It was, like I was saying earlier, it was just kind of reabsorbed back into the pot of the budget, and other initiatives that were, you know, being considered at the time, you know, the money would have been allocated to them.
For that year, but in future years, did we see a reduction? Or I guess we're still, essentially, we raised the tax rate to fund that.
Right, so everything else being equal, yes, you would have, you know, seen I guess a reduction in the tax rate. But there's so much going on, things moving in and out of the budget, that it's hard to, you know, pinpoint the direct effect on the rate. Yeah, if that answers your question.
So really paraphrasing, what we're saying is that position didn't turn into another title.
Correct.
Of another employee. Correct. Okay. That year, but then it disappeared, and it's not another title of another employee who suddenly appeared under that money.
But keep in mind, there was still a number of positions that were created and filled this year too. So
yeah,
it's
new
not
ones and
yeah.
I guess I wonder if the way to show that is in then the next year's budget spreadsheet, it would actually show as a reduction on there, and then we make the other decisions in their place, because we would have factored in the future years, because of how we budget on the kind of 3-year loose schedule, they would all be impacted by a change in year one. So if you, just like when you take something out of year one, it removes it from the future years, and we see a decrease in the future years tax rate. So I wonder if that's the right way to communicate that, is that through the next year's budget deliberation tool, it's specifically listed so that we see that change. Because we see it when we add it to all years in the forecasting.
So is what you're asking, I'm trying to understand it, is what you're asking, it's a little confusing.
Yes.
Is, are we funding an empty position? Is what you're
That
asking?
turned into another title.
Well, we are,
that's
that
why.
turned into just funding general revenue in those future years without actually approving something to fill that
But
space.
I don't
Yeah,
think,
it would have turned into just general funding for the operating fund or the operating budget in
so
general.
so the amount of money for that position is still being funded year after year without that position existing?
No.
Okay, that's
If
what I
I-
thought.
It was just that year.
Yeah.
Ms. Cully?
So, so maybe if I say it differently, it might make a little bit more sense. So if we had the grant position in, I can't remember what year it was, let's say 21, they were hired in April, they left, I can't remember, it was like, let's say it was September, because it was roughly that. There's a couple months of revenue, would have just stayed in that year. The next year, we would have come to council and said we need two other positions. So really, the next year, it looks like we're just funding one additional position instead of two, because we still have the funding from this position. Maybe that makes a little more sense.
Ms. Phillips?
So it would be more of an in and out. So the next year, remove the grant writer, so, so decrease the budget by that amount. But then we added communications and engineer, for example. So then, but obviously it wasn't clearly indicated on, so I made note of that as we move forward with the budget, any changes to personnel, that's clearly indicated on there. So you can see clearly we decrease these, we're proposing increasing here, as well as some other actions around
I
the
guess
positions.
just when I look at the next year's budget spreadsheet, I don't see that every new position has a new dollar amount. I'm not seeing that there's that one in, one out. All I'm seeing is the adding. And I'm so.
think
But I think everyone else gets it, so I'm okay.
Yeah, I think what we, I think that's what it's really getting down to is the communication. Of course, it was lost in this example, and we're trying to figure out how do we capture it
It wasn't
in
clearly
future.
indicated on the spreadsheet is what I'm thinking, whereas the other ones, the additions were, so you wouldn't see that that number actually dropped a little and then went back up. But moving forward, we'll make sure that that's, if there's positions like, on that rare occasion when positions do go away, that there's that it's clearly indicated we're reducing here by this amount, so this is the savings, but now we're adding here and here, so this is the addition, so the overall is, so we'll be clearer, yeah.
I see.
Sound
Ms.
good?
Devlin, please.
Thank you. If I can just add, Mr. Chair, that just adding, that one example might be really easy to minus it out, but I'll just sort of caution that sometimes there are positions, they're a little bit more fluid within the organization. A full-time might become 2 part-time, or something else might change or flux. So just keep that in mind too. I think it might not be as easy. That example would be really easy to just say, oh, we minus this one out. But that salaries and wages line is constantly in flux and moving. We're not creating new positions, but within that line item, there may be things that are happening where we have to hire someone part-time knowing that they're saving somewhere, or those kinds of things are typically under administration. The CA was approval to do that. So, that's just one thing to kind of keep in mind, that it might not be as clear like that, but it's that position's not being carried forward.
Yeah. No, it is about communication, the human dilemma always. Any other questions or direction that we can give to our admin about the going forward with regards to our, and Mr. Moore, if you want to add comment or question for us.
Well, I'm looking for some clarification, and maybe I'm the only one that's not clear on this. So when the mayor was talking about providing support and communicating with the public on grants and providing assistance to the public, how are we handling that? So when you're talking about public or community groups, if we're providing, is the direction for town staff to help community groups apply for grants for their organization on their own, or to help them apply for town grants that we have, or both? So then are we going to assist them and with this Alberta Council initiative and pay for that to help them? Or I guess I'm just looking for some understanding there.
I can be someone to chip in first. My belief is we should help groups apply, and that doesn't mean write the grant for them, in case you gave an example where you did all the work practically, but to give that strategic direction to groups. Some groups might need a little more hand-holding than others. But my sense in this is I would love to see groups assisted for their own and for joint grants, because what a community group will do, the town doesn't have to do, and we make for a richer community. So it's, and we know the state of volunteerism nowadays. It's getting tougher and tougher for groups to run. And if we as a community can support them, I think that's a very, very positive thing for us. Other comments?
So that's to be town staff to help?
Yeah,
these
would
groups,
assist
not through like a contractor, like
no.
Alberta Council?
No. Maybe it, yeah.
I'm okay with either. I guess to be really clear, I'd love to see our website updated to reflect that. I'd also like to see a letter that goes out to every community group that we're aware of that says, hi, we'd love to help you be more successful in grants. Here's the ways we can do it. 1, we have a workshop. 2, we have internal town staff that can help you source grants and do this. 3, we can also refer you to an external agency if it's outside of our capacity. If you'd like help, here is the contact person. Just really clearly that these are all the ways. My goal behind the grant writer position was really never internal. It was in the hopes that external groups in our community could help source more funding from it so that there's less asks on the municipal pot because we don't have huge ones. This came about in the years that we reduced some of the community services grants and other grants that were available, the FCSS grants. So to me, that was the trade-off. We reduced those grant pots and we brought in this position to help those groups hopefully find that funding elsewhere. So it very much is an external focus for me. And I think there could be multiple phases. If we say we can do it in-house, then that's great. But I could see a case that we'd have to refer some of these, and that's okay too. But I just really want to hold the hand of the senior center and of sporting clubs and of playground groups and of whoever it is in our community that might bring some great programs, infrastructure, events to our town.
Councillor Mearns?
I can support part of that. I don't know if it's our responsibility to go to community groups and help them find grants. I think if they need some help with grant writing and have some questions, 100%. But I think the onus would be on them. Hey, we're trying to find help to write this grant. I don't know if we should be grant hunters for community members.
Yeah, it's a sentiment I can agree with, even though I'm an advocate for helping, right? But they're initiating, they're starting, but they know, oh, we should talk to WCC to get a little help with this, or are we on the right track? Councillor Rilling.
I don't know if I agree with that, because I think that if they come to us and say, you know what, we really need help, we can't provide this, but we would love to. Do you have any connections or ideas of where we could look for grants? Because I think that's what you're doing, correct?
Yeah, we're already doing that, and Councillor Mearns, I can appreciate that because it does take time. The way that we're looking at it is we're already looking for grants and seeking out grants. So all of the grant opportunities, or most of them, are on generally the same websites that we're already looking at anyway. So it's really not a problem for us once we know what they're looking for to send them that information. Just to send out blanket emails of grants that are coming up probably doesn't make the most sense, but connecting with those groups one-on-one to find out what their needs truly are and to see if there's other partners that they can work with. A lot of the grants, you do want to have some partnerships and some collaboration, and it's really not a problem for us to help them in those ways.
Okay. Councillor Mearns?
Yeah, and I can support that. What I was thinking of is we have someone that's looking for grants for the Lions Group and just looking and trying to find them. But I can support the way that it's going on, so that's good.
Okay, any more questions to clarify direction? Is our admin ready to take the charge?
So if I may, so what I think I'm hearing from council is that you are supporting how we are currently operating with grants, assisting external groups with additional information, so adding some information onto the website, putting some information together for them, and maybe we typically do that when we're doing user group allocations, sending them information, so I'm sure we can add on some pieces there. As well, one of the things I should have mentioned is there's other groups out there like Alberta Sport Connect and stuff. When they send us information, we do already send that out to our user groups. So we can just do a little bit more on that piece, letting people know, and then outlining that information on the website.
Councillor Dakin.
Is it the best use of your time? Do you feel that you would be better utilizing your time doing other things? You're a great grant writer, but if you could find somebody that was like you that could do great grant writing, you know, is it the best use of your time? And do we need this person? Would you like to see a person in there?
So I personally don't write a lot of the grants. So I have written the CFEP one because selfishly that supports the town, that's town infrastructure, and we needed a partner that was wasn't a municipality to partner with us on that. And that's why I took the lead on that. When we're looking at things such as like with our sporting groups, our cultural groups, tourism, if that means that it's less that we need to do and less municipal funds we have to put forward because somebody else is going to step up and do it, I think it is a good resource of staff's time. There may be times when it's not appropriate, and we should recommend that they go to the Alberta Council for additional information and for additional assistance. So I think it is important to differentiate that. But I think it is appropriate that we help these groups. The more that we enable them, especially right off the bat, they're going to become more sufficient as they go along. So at first, it is going to be more hand-holding. That's okay, we expect that. They should get better and better at it, and we can give them some tips. So going through the workshop that WCC is doing, telling them, when you apply for a grant, save everything. So there's things that we can do to help them long-term that will reduce the amount of staff capacity that we have to put in.
So 1 and 3 then, together.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay, seeing no other comments, it looks like we're ready for the next agenda item. Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Moore is part of the next agenda item with the budget calendar. I note that when I looked at the budget calendar, it didn't include a very important item, which is tomorrow. It's someone's birthday, correct, Anna? Happy birthday. So the birthday calendar and the budget calendar sometimes has to be integrated because there's a lot of cost to parties. Happy birthday. Okay, Mr. Moore, if you can...
I don't know where to start now. Yeah.
The day after the party, let's start there.
Unfortunately, yeah, you can't get rid of me. That my oversight, my apologies about the birthday thing there, but yeah, so yeah, budget calendar, you don't get rid of me that easily. So yeah, about that upcoming cycle, as Mr. Waldo suggested, so just to help him out and keep him happy. I don't want him to make me run against Snapman. But yeah, so we're just looking for council to, I guess, consider some of the options presented tonight regarding the upcoming budget cycle, budget calendar. And so really, we're kind of looking for, I guess, more so a discussion around the operating budget. So, you know, historically, we've both operating capital budgets have been presented to council and deliberated, you know, prior to the end of November each year. I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir, everybody knows this, but so in recent years, it's changed a little bit. So the Municipal Government Act was updated recently, and so essentially municipalities have to approve both operating and capital budgets prior to January 1st of the year that the budget's for. So for capital budgets, this is required with no exceptions. And so capital for sure, we will still have to, present that, deliberate that in the fall prior to really the end of November each year. That's a given. But really it's on the, as I mentioned, on the operating side. So approval can happen after January 1st, which we have done for a number of years, but we have to pass an interim operating budget prior to the end of the current fiscal year. So we have done that for a number of years as well, as council is aware of. So we wanted to have a discussion really about the schedule for the operating budget, and in the report it's kind of laid out. So the first one, as I was just kind of mentioning, is the current schedule. Now, the dates are just somewhat arbitrary. It wasn't really looked at council's calendar or staff's calendar for the dates, but I know the municipal election is the 20th. So this is kind of what we've done the last number of years, as I mentioned, and so it works, but I think as we maybe witnessed this past year, we had, there was a bit of a hiccup on the timing of things. And so the second page there is the proposed schedule. That is one option we'd like, I guess kind of the main other option we'd like for council to discuss and consider. And this way, it kind of aligns better with the timing of us getting our assessment information. So we have to get that, the assessor has to provide that to us before it's a statutory requirement for the end of February each year. And sometimes they're mid-February, sometimes they're late February. We saw it later this year. And so I think there was some confusion with the public, how we had an open house and we were talking about the tax rate increase that was proposed at the time, but then 2 or 3 weeks later, when it came time to approving the budget and the tax rate bylaw, well, it had changed. So proposing this schedule, I think, would hopefully alleviate that problem from happening in the future. This would, you would also help with, getting us through the Christmas season and giving council more time, especially in a calendar or in a year where there's an election, for a new council, should there be a change, to kind of get settled in and get used to the town and town operations prior to getting right into budget. So, with the current schedule, of course, any new councillors would be thrown into a budget, 2 weeks after being elected. Whereas this proposed calendar would help give them more time. And so this also, I guess there's some discussion we had about a budget open house and the satisfaction survey, as Mr. Waldo was discussing earlier, the timing of all that information as well. So in this scenario, a budget open house would be later. And then, as you can see, on April 14th, which the first meeting into April, to give us more time to get the assessment data in by the end of February, crunch some numbers, and then to also give council more time to decide, if there's changes from what we had estimated in the assessment, to think about, how that would affect the budget and make any changes as they see fit. So again, the idea is to align up the timing of the assessment data with our budget process a little bit better, and to give us more time in the fall to deliberate the capital budget, as we had feedback this past year that we didn't spend enough time on that. We didn't give council enough time to go over that and deliberate that. And then early in the new year, to give council more time to really look at the operating budget and dive into that. So the past 2 years, we had the end of March as the approval date for the operating budget, but the past 2 years, we've gone into April. I feel, for the reasons that I'm speaking about. So, the dates are, like I said, kind of arbitrary, floating at this point. We can definitely, if council decides on this option, we'll definitely refine those and run it through everyone's schedules. But Yeah, that's the gist of it. Did I miss anything there in the report?
Maybe one question for clarity for me, at least.
Yep.
The extra time in the fall to focus on capital budget, how does that reflect in the calendar of the suggested calendar of
Yeah, so
2026?
the calendar for the fall, kind of the current one would sort of be the same, but it would just be capital focused, of course. We would still have to pass an interim budget, but we wouldn't be passing a proposed operating budget, and we would probably, you know, I don't know, need maybe about the same amount of dates as is in there now, but the fall schedule will be much the same as it is now, except it's just, we're just focusing on capital.
Okay. Mayor Hansen.
I like the new proposed schedule getting us closer to the assessment time. My only comment would be is if there's anything in the capital budget that has operational implications, if that could just be specifically highlighted. So use an example, the Pagado Park expansion might, or some years has come with additional park staff. So making sure we're considering those two things, one keeping in mind to the other. So I'm not sure how we'd, you know, add that to the presentations, but just as long as that's a consideration for it, then.
That's a good point.
Sounds great.
Councilor Mearns?
So do we still need to do an interim operating budget before January 1st? Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, we do.
And so how do we just go on the year before, sort of, or just?
Yeah, basically, we put a number or go in, there's two ways you can do it, put a number in, or you can say based on the previous year's operating budget, so, yep.
One key one to me is avoiding the election time, because when you put thought into a budget deliberation for a full day, and then you change half the people, and then, you know, the new people have to deliberate still and be caught up in that process. I really strongly like the proposed schedule for that number one reason, and then the number two is the assessment timing. Any other thoughts? Do I see a leanings to, I saw a few heads nodding here and there about going to the proposed schedule? Yeah. One less day of deliberations that Councillor Rilling needs. Yeah, are you sure? Any other comment or question, Mr. Moore?
Well, one thing that came up kind of after this was published was the strategic plan. I don't know, you know, this, I think the proposed schedule may give us a little more flexibility, and I don't know what's been discussed or what the plan is for the timing of that with the new council, but I don't know if that would come after the budget process or before or during, but anyway, just something to consider.
Okay, seeing no other comment from council. Mr. Moore, is it clear as mud? Do we need to, does this have to come back to us, or do we need to make a statement here as council to say, yes, we're going for proposed schedule? Thumbs indication is clear enough then? Yeah, thumbs up. Okay.
Seems like if council's okay with that, we'll refine this and circulate it and solidify the dates
and stuff.
For sure, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you for
the
proposal. All right, our next item is our advocacy priorities. First one on the block is healthcare. Councillor Rilling.
I have no further comment. We just talked about it at the advocacy, at the strategic planning, and there's some changes that are being made, but that will all come out in the wash. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Hansen?
I have a process question. For the next cow, are we able to change, I'm not sure if we have to wait till we approve everything, or are we able to just change that heading to that advocacy roundtable type thing sooner than later?
Mayor Hanson, are you referring to the idea of quarterly reporting or written reporting?
Just that if we still had a bit of a verbal update on here, it not necessarily be so defined that we go one by one, because that is kind of the direction I think we talked about, or do we need to make a motion to change that agenda item on here in alignment with our conversation?
Ms.
Through the
Phillips?
chair, we could just update the template on that and adjust the agenda. The other question we had actually around advocacy was, our thought process around it was making those adjustments immediately, but then also bringing it back, the whole plan that Mr. McIntyre brought forward to be adopted, including those changes to advocacy. So there's also a motion supporting that. But being that we're in the time of year we're at, we thought communicating that on the website and whatnot, we'd proceed with immediately, but then formalize it at the next council, not this next week's meeting, but the one after that, if that works. But we can update this template. Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Tourism, any new report there?
I'll follow Councillor Rilling's lead. And, yeah, same thing.
Good. And new high school, Councillor Payne. Okay, thank you. We have our written reports from Council Committee and Events reports on page 176, 77, 78. Mayor Hanson's first report, anything to highlight? Okay, and Councillor Rilling and Councillor Mearns. Okay, as written. Thank you, colleagues. We have upcoming meeting and events. I will not read them, but we will, any questions or commentary? Seeing none, I'm just scanning the list. Our next item is the closed meeting. Ms. Phillips first.
I'm just wondering if we need to make a motion to go past 3 hours in the event we go past 7? I don't know quite what the process is in committee of the whole, because we don't typically do motions, but then our procedural does say we need a motion.
Yeah, I haven't run into
I
that
would
yet.
recommend, because we still have over a half an hour, we do our best.
Okay.
And we can ask for forgiveness later.
I feel like those wearing all the jerseys in the room might appreciate that, so. Okay, thank you.
All right. And looking for a motion, Councillor Mearns, to move us in.
Make this motion that this committee of the whole meeting continue with the closed session to discuss advice from officials, and this item shall remain confidential pursuant to 24(1)(c) of the Freedom of Information Protection and Privacy Act, RSA 2000 CF 25, and Section 197(2) of the Municipal Government Act, RSA 2000 CM 26.
Thank you. All those in favor? Carried and unanimously. We'll proceed to council meeting room behind.
until the Oilers are out. Down on Lakeshore? So as soon as the Oilers are out, it's actual patio season.
All right, seeking a motion to take us out of closed meeting.
I move that the closed session concludes and council reverts back to the committee of the whole meeting of council.
All those in favor? And carried unanimously. Seeing no other items on the agenda, I declare the meeting adjourned.